news directly from the president. In fact, it might be the only way to get the unvarnished truth.
That is the Texas congressman who heads the House Science Committee. Speaking on the House floor this week, he gave this extended floor speech, ripping the media, praising the new president, and concluding with an admonition to the American people that you'd be better off getting your news directly from the president. It's the only way to get the unvarnished truth. At the end of November, Congress passed the bill that funds the military. It's called the National Defense Authorization Act. It's one of those bills that basically has to pass every year. It funds the Defense Department, funds the U.S. military. This year, that bill was 1,587 pages long. This is roughly, can you see that there? Yeah, right. This is roughly 1,587 pages. So this was the length of the bill. 1,404 pages into it. So, like, if you were reading from the beginning, you get down to here. 1,400 pages into it. And this bill that just passed in November, which was signed by President Obama, on page 1,404 of that bill, there was a provision about something called the Voice of America. Voice of America is a fairly non-controversial, basically a public diplomacy outlet that is run as part of the U.S. government. Every once in a while, there's some, minor kerfuffle or news story about the Voice of America, but it's now considered to be pretty non-controversial. It was founded during World War II. It broadcasts in 100 countries, 61 languages. It reaches over 250 million people around the world. And from World War II until very recently, it could only be broadcast around the world. They changed that in 2013, interestingly. Now, since 2013, Voice of America can also be broadcast in the United States. That's new. So they've got a really big budget, $800 million. The reason it's fairly non-controversial is in part because it mostly broadcasts abroad. But it's also because it's been run in a low-key, non-partisan way. It's been overseen, for example, by a broadcasting board of governors, sort of a panel of worthy professionals. They're bipartisan, appointed by both Republicans and Democrats. The agency is also run as part of the State Department. It's run in a way that's supposed to be insulated from our domestic politics, so it can't be used as a partisan tool by anyone in government. That's the way it's supposed to go. But on page 1,404 of the defense bill that was passed by the Republican Congress right after the election, this far into the bill that high, they took the Board of Governors part out of the equation. Isn't that interesting? So that's no longer who runs this $800 million broadcasting effort, Voice of America. Now, instead of being run by a nonpartisan, sort of insulated Board of Governors, it's now run by a CEO who is appointed by the president and who serves at the pleasure of the president. When President Obama signed that big defense spending bill in November, he actually attached a signing statement to it saying that he objected to that change at the Voice of America. But he did sign the bill. This is kind of a must-pass bill. Funds the military. And so he signed the bill overall, even though he expressed those objections about that one part of it. But thanks to that one part of it, thanks to the change that just went into effect at this agency, the Voice of America is now under the authority of a CEO who answers to President Trump. And the CEO's office this week at the Voice of America was taken over by two 20-something political operatives from the Trump campaign. One of whom, the guy on the left side of your screen, he was a right-wing blogger for a website called The Daily Surge. The other was a young man who recently moved to New Hampshire to be part of the utopian experiment where libertarians would flock to New Hampshire from all over the country and create critical mass and take over that government, and I don't know what they were going to do. But those two 20-something guys, those two young Trump volunteers, as of this week, they're in the CEO offices at the Voice of America. Did I mention that this is a state-run broadcasting network with an $800 million budget that recently became legal to broadcast its content in the United States? There's a lot going on with the new administration. I know these new executive orders today, we'll be talking about those tonight. There's this weird press lottery we have every day now. We're at the start of the press briefing from the White House. A new obscure right-wing pro-Trump outlet gets called on first or second at the press briefing. the Laura Ingraham website getting the first question, the Christian Broadcasting Network getting the second question. Today it was the Mooney paper from DC, the Washington Times. First question at the press briefing. The president today promised a full-scale federal investigation into the millions of illegal votes he said were cast in this presidential election. He told an interview tonight that every single one of those millions of illegal votes that was cast in the presidential election wasn't cast for him. And he knows it. And now there's going to be a federal investigation to prove it. And that's insane. That's insane. And it is sometimes hard to get your bearings when the president himself and the people who are working for him say stuff every day that is blatantly and obviously not true. I think in the middle of that, the challenge is to stay focused not just on what they are saying, no matter how insane it is. I think that the trick is to stay focused on what they're doing, whether or not they're talking about it. I mean, it's one thing for them to call it an alternative fact when the White House presents a blatant lie to the American public. It is another thing for them to overtly try to build in a dedicated way with the resources of the federal government an alternative factual universe for their supporters to live in. And we count on the political opposition and we count on the free media to sort out lies from truth in this country, particularly when they are lies told by people in power. But these guys really do also now have the opportunity to build their own media in a way that no president has ever been able to do so before. No president has ever been able to use the resources of the U.S. government to have broadcasting resources like that at his or her disposal. But they've done it now, and they've already installed their people in the corner office.